Good evening. Welcome to our June 11th regularly scheduled City Council meeting. Similar to last meeting, we do have our time-sensitive districting item, which will start at 6:15. That will happen with staff. Our demographer who's here will be addressing public questions in a few different ways. We have some pre-submitted questions, so we're going to, anything that was received prior to 3 p.m. So we'll be going through those, and then after that, questions of the audience can come via question cards. In the back of the room, there are question cards that you can write your questions down. If you need help, that we do have some staff members that are more than happy to help you. And then if there's already questions in Ask, you don't need to repeat them. We will accept the cards until the beginning of the question and answer process after that 6:15 time has come. And then again, similar to last week, if we get to that 6:15 time and we haven't done consent or anything, we'll just kind of push those to further in the meeting, just so we're all on the same page. Thank you so much. Maybe we have a roll call.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Orbach.
Here.
Councilmember Westman.
Here.
Vice Mayor Jensen.
Here.
And Mayor Morgan.
Here. Would you all join in the Pledge of Allegiance? Any additions or deletions?
Staff has no changes to the agenda this evening.
Great. We have a proclamation this evening. We're declaring June 2026 as Older Americans Month. Did you want to speak first, and then I can just give you this? Yeah.
Thank you. I'll start over. Good evening. My name is Whitney Barnes. I'm a social work supervisor with the Santa Cruz County Adult Protective Services team. I would like to thank the City of Capitola for declaring June 2026 Elder Abuse Awareness Month. This proclamation acknowledges and values the critical role that Adult Protective Services plays in helping end elder abuse while supporting the well-being of all older and dependent adults in our county. The aging population is growing in demographics, as well as in their contributions to our community. Older adults in Capitola and throughout the county enrich our communities as vital leaders, mentors, volunteers, and neighbors. However, estimates suggest that roughly 10% of all older adults in the U.S. experience some form of elder abuse, neglect, or self-neglect. Additionally, only 1 in 24 episodes of abuse are believed to be reported to authorities. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind our community that while elder abuse often goes unnoticed, we can all take steps to prevent and stop abuse, neglect, and exploitation of older adults. Calling or visiting with loved ones, educating yourself about common signs of elder abuse, or even reaching out and consulting with the APS, the Adult Protective Services team, are just a few ways that anyone can help end elder abuse and make this community safer for older adults. Residents of Capitola, friends, family members, community partners, professionals can all take steps towards ending elder abuse and neglect. You're welcome to learn more about how Adult Protective Services serves older adults in our community and see some newly published videos featuring clients that have been served by our program by visiting our website at santacruzhumanservices.org. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for presenting. Just a few words of Santa Cruz County's more than 268,000 residents. 24% of the current population are 60 or older. Older adults of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds enrich and strengthen our community, as said. And over 3,000 reports of the elder abuse or neglect have been received each year by the County of Santa Cruz Human Services Adult Protection Services. It remains one of the most unrecognized and underreported issues, and Santa Cruz County earned its AARP Age-Friendly Community designation in 2022 through collaborations with local cities and many community service partners to prevent abuse and to protect victims and prosecute offenders who abuse our elderly. Collaborative partnerships help ensure comprehensive structures as developed so people may retain community and societal connection as they age. So I, Margo Morgan, the mayor of Capitola, hereby declare June 2026 a National Elder Abuse Awareness Month. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, additional materials, item 4.
Staff did receive additional materials for tonight's agenda packet. For item, I believe it's 7C, we received one staff memorandum with an updated attachment. And then for item 8A, there were 13 emails updated in the packet. The most recent email was updated just a few minutes ago, so that one is not available for public review in the back of the room, but it is available online for public review.
Great. All right. Item 5, this is oral communications from members of the public. Anything that is not on the general government, it can be a consent item or anything not on general. Hi, welcome.
Good evening, Karen, Hannah. I'd love to be up here saying thank you to the city for doing something wonderful, but unfortunately I'm going to have to rant just a little bit. Hopefully some of the staff and parents and supervisors of the junior guard program are either here or watching or can be communicated with. I always assumed that part of the junior guard program is teaching respect and appreciation for our community here. And today I was walking to my store on Capitola Avenue, and 5 junior guard teenager kind of, I don't know, it's hard to tell the age, but 12, 13-year-olds were on their bikes. I asked them to, as I have to everybody, please walk your bikes. It's what it's printed on the sidewalk. 2 of them rode off the sidewalk and kept going against traffic, but 3 of them attempted to continue to ride. And of course, you know, it's me. I blocked their way so they couldn't continue. And so they did get off their bikes and start walking. And as soon as they got on the other side of me, they got on their bikes and they kept riding. I hate to say this, but a lot of the business owners in Capitola, when we see those little red bathing suits start at the beginning of summer, we're like, crap, here they come. I think we need some supervision from the staff that are down there with those kids. Those kids look up to all those instructors. I know they do. They worship them. Those guys need to come, especially at the transition time when the class is over. They need to be on Capitola Avenue, and they need to straighten these kids out on some of their behaviors, because I don't think they'll learn if somebody that they respect doesn't tell them this is not acceptable behavior. This is Capitola Village. This is a special place. You don't go weaving around the people that are trying to push their stroller or walk with a walker or walk their dog or whatever. So that's rant number 1. And then speaking of sidewalks are filthy. The city very generously pays a contractor to clean the sidewalks twice a month from April till either September or October. We haven't determined which one. The problem is they're not doing it. They're getting paid, but they are not doing the work. I don't know what else to say. I've brought it up. I've taken videos. Go down there and look at the sidewalks. They're disgusting. Margo, you work down there. Look at the ones in front of where you work. I want a job at the city where I can get paid and not do the work, because I think that would be awesome.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm here to share my concerns about the important topic of council member residency. Ensuring that our leaders live in the areas that they represent is a vital part of protecting voting integrity and community trust. I'm concerned by how you, the city council, the city attorney, the city manager, and his staff handled the residency issue that was in 2025. When questions were raised about the council members' living arrangements, it felt too many in the community that the truth was ignored, and instead you set out to protect the council member, increasing the distrust by the community members. You as council members are representing our community in collaboration with legal staff should always work together to protect the transparency of our city. You must create a clear policy so this does not happen again. I know there are complex laws around districting and privacy. However, finding a legal way to confirm residency is necessary to keep trust of the voters in Capitola. Other cities have shown a strong commitment for this issue. For example, the city of Fairfield, just in the last couple of weeks, recently hired an independent investigator to look into the residency questions regarding their own mayor. While that process cost the city $66,000, it showed a clear desire to find the facts. Like Fairfield, I hope you, as our city council, will take a similar approach to transparency and community support. Let's work together to find a clear path forward to build a stronger path and more trusting community. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else wish to speak? Well, great timing. We're at 6:12 right now. So we will promptly begin our item 8A at 6:15. So that means we will have staff and city council comments and consent items done after 8A. All right. Do you want to wait the extra 3 minutes?
I think we're all set.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Tonight, we are going to be holding our second public hearing to talk about districting. While this is only the second public hearing, I do want to also clarify that we've had other meetings about this topic, which we'll go over later in the presentation. As the mayor stated, tonight's format is a little bit different, so I wanted to quickly outline it so everyone's clear. We're going to start off with a brief presentation from myself and Doug Johnson, our demographer. Then we will have time for council questions. I should also clarify that as a part of our presentation, we'll address the pre-submitted questions. It'll happen during the slides. In case that's a council question, hopefully it addresses it head on. Then we have time for council questions like we normally do during our normal agenda procedure. Then we will take questions from the public on those cards that are available in the back of the room. I know someone has already at least submitted one card back there, so if you have a question, please feel free to submit them back there. Then we'll provide answers to those questions from the cards, and then we will take public comment, so everyone has an opportunity to also share their thoughts, and then we'll go back to the council for deliberation and a potentially decision. So tonight for the council's recommended action is to, 1, conduct a public hearing to discuss the transition to districts, receive community input in the form of the question and answer period as well as public comment, and then provide direction to the demographer on the composition or number of voting districts. We've already done a number of items regarding the districting process so far. So to date, I want to just quickly recap the background. Back in March, the city received a letter alleging a violation of the California Voting Rights Act. In late April, the city adopted a resolution of intent to transition to districts and hired Doug Johnson as the city's demographer from National Demographics Corporation. We also launched a public website with a lot of information and resources, including a question and answer portal and a public mapping tool. The city distributed a mailer to residents of Capitola on May 22nd, held one informational item at a city council meeting on May 14th, held the first public hearing on May 28th, and then just before tonight's council meeting, held an in-person community question and answer session. The city has conducted a lot of public outreach to date. We've been regularly updating our website with general districting information. We have several different options for the public to submit maps to the city or just regular identification of neighborhoods or other features that they think should be important or highlighted. There are multiple ways for the public to submit questions or comments or submit maps to the city. The city has created and uploaded a few FAQ documents and will continue to create more based on public input, including the input received at tonight's question and answer session before the meeting. We have a dedicated email address where you can email us with questions or send us your comments. And we will be sending out a second mailer to the residents of Capitola in the next couple of days. Moving forward, we will continue to have more meetings. So tonight marks the second official public hearing to receive input on the composition of districts. Up until now, the city's stenographer has not drawn any maps, though we have received from the public. After tonight's meeting, a mailer will be sent to residents outlining the upcoming dates for public input or other opportunities for participation. On June 17th, no later than June 17th, the city will publish the first official maps drawn by the demographer for feedback. On June 20th, the city will hold an online webinar to solicit more public outreach and get more public input. After that, we'll hold 2 more public hearings to receive feedback on the draft maps that have been proposed. Those are scheduled for our meetings on June 25th and July 23rd. And then the final maps will be adopted on August 27th before the deadline to submit them back, which is August 28th. So we are kind of chugging along our timeline here, and you'll see a lot of dates, but make sure to check our website because we're always posting more information on there. Here's a visual representation of that timeline. You'll see a red arrow pointing to where we're at right now. That gold star marks the maps, which happen basically in a week now. And you can see where we have upcoming meeting opportunities after the maps are shared. So before tonight's meeting, we held an in-person question and answer session just across the hall in the community room. The meeting was held from 4:30 to 5:30. We had approximately 24 to 25 attendees. I had a hard time counting there in the back because there was a couple people who were sitting or standing. We received approximately 20 questions, which we were able to answer during that time. The topics were really varied. We appreciated the public's robust discussion and back and forth with our demographer. Some of the topics included population balancing when it comes to districting, or how we managed to do that, how the maps will be narrowed down from the number of maps received to the number of maps going to the council, where the data is coming from and when the data is updated that goes into creating these maps, how people can submit maps or the ways people can submit maps, and then the topic of term limits and how that applies to the districting process. We've received a lot of public input to date. Like I mentioned at the start of tonight's meeting during additional materials, we received an additional email right before the meeting started, so this is actually not even the total number. But I really want to highlight the community has actively been participating and providing input throughout this process. So when we first started talking about districting back in April, we had a meeting where we talked about it for the first time. We received 2 emails for that meeting. We had 4 speakers at that meeting. On April 30th, when we adopted that resolution of intent, we had 8 emails related to that topic at that meeting and 8 speakers in person at that meeting. On May 14th, 1 email as additional materials and 3 additional speakers. At our last meeting, we had 7 emails and 5 speakers in person. For tonight's meeting, just so far, you've gotten 13 emails, and I'm sure we have a lot of people in the audience who might be speaking on the topic. So that's a lot of input just at council meetings. Outside of council meetings, there have already been at least 10 map submissions, and then questions or comments submitted through our different options through our website or the form or the email. We've received 7 total, not including the 20 plus questions we just covered at that question and answer session. So the public has actively been engaged. We're really super impressed with the public who have participated so far. We're really grateful, and I just want to issue a huge thank you to our community for answering the call to the public input that we've requested. When it comes to the previously submitted questions, so like I said, there's a few different ways that people can submit the questions to us and a few different ways that we're answering them. The city to date has published 3 separate FAQ documents. Those are available in the back of the room in hard copy or are available on our website. One is just a general kind of informational FAQ document on how the districting process works. One is specific to the topic of a mayor, the elected mayor versus the rotating mayor that the city already has. And then one was specific to questions received in the month of May. And so the plan is to publish a monthly update, essentially. So the month of June will have its own FAQ document that would include all of the questions we received at tonight's community meeting. People can always submit questions through the form on our website or by email. And then we also have been soliciting questions on social media, and we've gotten a couple of questions through that format as well. Tonight, since the beginning of June, we've received 3 questions, which we plan to answer in the following slides. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our city manager, who's going to MC and help direct the answers to the next questions.
Thank you, Julia. So, as Julie mentioned, we got 3 questions submitted to the city since, I think this was since June 1st, correct? Yeah, the other questions that have been submitted to the city have all been answered on FAQs, which Julia mentioned you can find on our website. So this question, I'm not going to read it in its entirety, but the questioner did request that the information was included in its entirety, so you can see it there. I'll give everyone a moment to peruse it. And then I will be pivoting to our city attorney to help with the question at the end there, which is, will the city establish and enforce a policy regarding candidates to show proof of residency in the city and the district they run in? If so, what will the steps be that are required? Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you. So to start, residency is defined by state law. Qualifications to hold office are also matters of state law. To answer the local question, there is not currently an existing policy, but that is up to the city council to decide whether to explore a potential policy.
Okay. Question 2. Another question for our city attorney. This came in as, please have the city attorney explain how basing districts on communities of interest is in compliance with the U.S. Constitution in the light of Louisiana versus Callis. I believe we had a very similar question in our workshop, and I think you've gotten it at previous council meetings. So if you want to go back over that for us briefly.
Thank you. So to reiterate prior commentary on this issue, Louisiana v. Calais did not overrule or deem unconstitutional the federal version of the Voting Rights Act or any parallel state provisions like the California Voting Rights Act. And communities of interest is also defined by state law. There's an elections code that defines what it is. It goes through a bunch of different factors, goes over shared interests that particular neighborhoods might have, desired schools, things like that. And I want to highlight that race is not one of the enumerated factors for what a community of interest could be.
And then the last question, I believe this also came in our workshop, and this is one that maybe Doug can help us with. And are there examples of other cities of Capitola's size or smaller that have transitioned to district elections?
And yes, as bizarre as it is to consider districts for such a small jurisdiction, there actually are a number of much smaller jurisdictions. So just pull together a handful of them. So Taft down by Bakersfield, which is about 7,000 people. Big Bear Lake, I think, is the smallest that got a challenge. They're just 5,100, 5,200 people. If you know Buellton and Solvang, the tourist towns there, both of them received challenges. And all these jurisdictions went to districts. Woodside, up in San Mateo County, they were really unhappy about it. They have ways to express it, but they did go to district elections as well. And Gonzales, over by Salinas, is also just a little bit smaller than Capitola. So that's ones that are smaller than you. And then there are another 10 or 11 that are right around 9,000 to 12,000 that have also had to change. So you're certainly not alone in this boat.
Those were all of our pre-submitted questions for the month of June. As a reminder, anyone can submit a question at any time. There's a form on our website. The website's listed on the screen. We'll take questions over email. The specific email address is listed on the screen, but you can also just email them to any member of staff and we'll log it as a question. If you don't prefer a written question, you can always pick up the phone and staff will transcribe the question for you. Like I mentioned, the questions we received in tonight's question and answer session will be transcribed into a FAQ document and will be published by the end of the month, including any other questions you received in the month of June. With that, before we transition to the question and answer portion or council questions, I wanted to share Doug's presentation as well. He has a couple of brief slides to go over.
And for those that have been at the earlier hearings, these will look familiar, so I'll go through them very briefly. But if we go ahead to the next slide. So there are statutory rules. In the left-hand side, you can see the federal laws. The main one that impacts us in this project is equal population, equal number of people in each proposed district. The Federal Voting Rights Act and no racial gerrymandering really aren't going to play in because of your demographics. Then I won't go through all of them one by one, but then the state of California has their prioritized list of criteria that you can see listed in the middle there, and a prohibition that we cannot draw districts to favor or discriminate against an incumbent potential candidate or political party. And then if there are multiple maps that are equal on all those statutory requirements, then we can look at what the courts call traditional redistricting principles, things like future growth, other local concerns, but it rarely comes down to that category. Usually those criteria dominate. So if we go to the next slide. In addition to robust efforts to generate public comments, we've also put out a big set of tools for residents to use, everything from a kind of a Google Maps style viewer where people can look at the draft maps to online and paper-based tools that people can use to draw and submit their own maps. And as you heard from the city clerk, people are doing that. And we appreciate that. And we're happy to see those maps coming in. And we'll continue. As maps come in, they get updated. So on that interactive review map that's linked, you can already see the 10 maps that have come in already. Next slide. And then you just saw these links, so I won't go through them again, but we hope to hear from more people as this goes forward. And then obviously what we're looking for in comments from the public and ultimately direction from the council is, do they prefer 5 districts with a rotating mayor or 4 districts with a citywide elected mayor? And then of course, we're continuing to look to gain more insights about neighborhoods and communities of interest. I will say we did have the participants at the earlier workshop draw their neighborhoods on a map. So we did get a whole bunch of neighborhoods drawn through that process. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions you have now or after the public comments.
With that, we're all available for council questions, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Great. Sorry, we'll go to questions. Councilmember Clark.
Thank you. Question I have about districts and conflicts of interest. Since the districts are going to be small areas where the council member is going to be voting on, and that might be a difficult situation when it comes to recusing themselves.
Yeah, so I can touch on it and I'll defer to the city attorney too. The rules about having a financial interest in a certain distance from a parcel are the same. Those don't change. So yes, you have to live in your district, and since geographically the districts will be very small, each council member, whoever is elected, will have a definite chunk of their district that they are financially conflicted about zoning and those kinds of issues. Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, so that doesn't eliminate conflict of interest because you obviously are going to own a home or live in the area, hopefully voting on it.
Yeah, I won't go anywhere near what a financial interest is. I can defer to the city attorney on that.
Thank you. So yes, the conflict of interest questions are very fact intensive and usually generated when there's a project or item contract that's before the council for consideration. From there, staff will generate maps and we'll do the whole analysis. So that process does not change, but to the council member's point, that's something where there is still the balance of the council remaining to consider that issue. Because if a council member is conflicted out, other members of the council may still pick up that and can have that conversation and take a vote on that issue.
It does reinforce the importance of, even though council members represent a district, hopefully they continue to keep an ear open to the whole city once you're elected.
Thank you.
So based on the presentation, I saw that there's that the first mailer for residents in Capitola went out on May 22nd. When I did not receive mine, I reached out to the city, and I realized and discovered that there are a number of Capitola residents who were affected and did not get their informational mailer. I didn't get a clear answer when I asked this question, but how many residents were affected by that?
I don't know exactly. I believe it's under 100 homes. It's homes that are outside of they're in the Live Oak post office delivery route. And so they don't have a Capitola address, they have a Santa Cruz address. So there's just a number of homes kind of on our western periphery that we discovered. Thank you, Councilmember Orbach, for pointing this out. We didn't know this, but we're not included in the city's database of mailing. And it hadn't been for years, frankly.
Well, given how important this is, I have to express how disappointed I am that we had to discover this from this situation. And I'm glad we're able to now know so that in the future for mailers, these residents will get timely informational mailers. Second question, I know there are people asking about this residency policy. Is it legal to have one in the state? I mean, is it legal to have a residency policy?
So the residency issue is, could be separated from the districting issue, I think, as a starting point. And to answer your question, it implicates preemption issues. So as explained earlier, the definition of a person's residency and also their ability to hold office is set by state law. The city cannot change that. We are aware that there are other cities that have sort of adopted ordinances around that to require proof and submission of various documents, things like that. It's an open question about how effective that is and defensible it is if it were to be challenged.
Okay. And not last question. Okay. If we choose to have 5 districts, can we decide to extend the mayoral term from 1 year to 2? And how will we go about this?
So our muni code specifies that the city council selects a mayor every year. The first meeting following the election of a new council. So that would be a muni code amendment.
That's possible. And we don't need to necessarily do it now. We can do it in a future meeting if we decide, given the community's input about wanting continuity of leadership, we can decide we want to have a mayor to serve 2 years by adopting a change in our municipal code.
Yes.
Great. If we choose to have 4 districts and an at-large mayor, and then we decide at a later time we want to go to 5 districts because we made the wrong decision, what's the process again?
Yeah, it's easiest done when you have to redistrict after the census. That's, as long as you have to redraw the map, you just redraw a new map. Otherwise, you get into, the voters can do it anytime. The voters could put it on the ballot and vote on it to force the change, and that would take place. If you want to do it by ordinance as you're going through this process, then it has to be done to further the purposes of the California Voting Rights Act. That's the only door that lets you do it by ordinance. So we'd have to get into a demographic study of that. So it is possible but complicated, except at the time when you're redistricting or by the voters.
And this voter ballot measure is a citizens initiative, so signature gathering, is that what you mean?
I think the council could probably put it on the ballot, but that's a debated question that has come up a number of jurisdictions. It's clear the voters have the right to do it by signature, definitely. The council might or may not, depending on who you ask, be able to do it by council action.
Thank you.
Councilmember Westman, questions?
First, I do agree that this residency issue keeps coming up, and usually we put things on a future agenda, during when we make comments. But it seems like it would make sense to, for us to agendize it and maybe see what other cities are doing and have our city attorney give us some more sort of lengthy presentation about, what's legal and what's not legal. So, it can be decided and either adopted or put to bed. But seems like that's something that we should do sometime in the next couple of months. And I would like the demographer to explain to me one more time. I get very confused about the whole succession issue. And because we know that 2 seats are going to be up for election, but with districts, that'll all be different. And so I find it confusing. Perhaps you can enlighten me.
Sure. So once a map is chosen, we then look at that map and hopefully, in terms of making the sequencing simple, the 2 council members who are up in 2028, when their current terms end in 2028, will each be alone in a single district, in their own district. And that's the case, those 2 districts become the 2028 districts. There is, if anyone reads the law, there's a clause that says first we have to sequence them in accordance with the purposes of the California Voting Rights Act. But as I've talked about here, you don't have the ethnic concentration that would drive that. So it's just going to be respect the voters' choices, let the voters decide who has earned re-election. So if there's a 2028 member alone, put that district up in 2028. If there's another 2028 council member up alone, put that council member up in 2028. Or if they're both in one seat, then that seat goes up in 2028, so they both get to run. Only one can win, but they both get to run. Same thing with the 2030s. The sequencing is much easier if everyone's in their own seat, and then it just goes along with the council member's term. Where it gets complicated is if you have a 2028 council member and a 2030 council member in the same seat. Then we have to decide which year that seat goes up, what the impact is. If a 2028 council member ends up in a 2030 seat, then that 2028 council member, this will be your last term. And they will leave at the end of the term because they're not in a seat where they could run. So we try to avoid that. But hopefully, like I said, I don't know where you live. We can't look at that until a map is chosen. And so at that point, we'll look at it and hopefully the districts will match up with your terms. If not, then it gets a complicated discussion.
I'll save the rest of my comments till we have discussion.
Just looking over at the city attorney, there's conversation going on back and forth regarding, I think, Council Member Westman's comment about having it on the agenda. Is there any comment around that? Or I know our new rule is it needs to be seconded. So do you need me to second it that gets on the agenda, or is it just an automatic thing that the staff's going to be handling?
You just answered the question we were discussing amongst ourselves. Do we need to say, do we have a second?
You have a second, so
Okay.
we'll
Thank
talk
you.
about that at a later date. So just clarify that. And just a comment, Doug, I just want to personally thank you. I think our council and our city, we've been very impressed with how accessible you've been, how available you've been. I've heard it from other community members, and so we thank you for that. And also, Julia, you've been amazing in your preparation for this, and so thank you for that. And that's all I have.
Great. I had a couple questions. Due to the fact that possibly in a district, nobody would be interested in running for that specific seat. So is there a way to maybe learn about some more robust appointing ways? I know we've kind of been through that here, and I think it, how do we write that into us moving forward, like what that appointing system looks like so that it is streamlined?
So there's going to be a number of sort of follow-on items that I think the city, depending on where we land, whether it's 4 and 1, 5 and a 2-year term, I think there's going to just be a number of different policies the city's going to want to evaluate before implementing the districts, which would come in 2028. I think talking about maybe a more robust, I've heard this mentioned a couple times, a more robust kind of framework around appointing members, assuming that we may have more vacancies, unfortunately, if we have smaller districts and we don't have people running, or one person runs from a district and then they subsequently run for mayor. This question of, do we want to adopt a residency policy? Do we want to adopt a voluntary residency policy? Do we, is there a legal avenue to have something else, trying to do that? Term limits was a question that came up during the community meeting, in fact, is that something, right now our term limit ordinance was written and approved by the voters in such a way that means you can run for 2 elective terms. So if, depending on where we land tonight, we may want to put something in front of the voters that clarifies that, or maybe changes it in some way. So I think there's going to be a number of follow-on items once we get the districting done. This is the one that they have the gun to our head for us to
Right.
get done. And
No, I totally
follow-on
understand
items for us to tackle.
that. Okay, great. And then this may just be too nitty gritty, but I'm thinking about recusals and being a member of your district. And is there any like boundaries of, say there's 2 people in 2 different districts, but they're like on the line and then they both have to recuse, and like, is that something that comes up often? And I could see that could be kind of difficult for a specific council,
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point that the conflict of interest diameter is not limited to your district. It can certainly spill over into the neighboring district, and you could run into all those issues. Again, the districts or not districts doesn't impact that. It is
what it is. Yeah, makes it. Okay. And then I guess I just had that question about residency too. So it sounds like there's some homework to be done moving forward once we decide. Okay, great. I think that was all. Oh,
Mayor, if I might add to the conflict of interest
yeah,
discussion.
of course.
So just to use a very overly simplified version, if you have like a square, let's go with 4 districts for now, and everyone is in the corner where the lines meet, potentially 4 conflicts. The rule of necessity and things like that, your standard conflict of interest rules would be able to address some of these questions that are coming up for us in this district.
Okay, great. And then I don't know if this came up earlier in the session, but is the seat of the vice mayor, is that then voted on by the council, just kind of like it is now, or?
Yes, even if there's a citywide mayor, the vice mayor is still chosen by the council.
Okay. Not necessarily rotated, but voted on, or that depends.
It depends. I've seen it where the at-large mayor might want a specific person because of their relationship or ability to advocate for the city on various issues might be a better pairing. That is also subject to basically consent of the remaining members of the council. So it could rotate.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, rotation gets easier because the council members have 4-year terms and there's 4 of them.
Right.
So that does play in if the council chooses to go that way.
Okay, great. Those were my questions. And yes, thank you for all the hard work we've done so far. I know there's more to come. Did we need to answer any of the card questions?
Let me go grab them from the back of the room and I'll be right back.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And then we can go out to public. Yeah, okay.
So this is a question I think that we just heard from Mayor Morgan, but if the mayor is elected, how would the vice mayor be selected? Council decision, rotation, mayor appointment, can this change? So in summary, I think the answer was, it depends. Those are all options. And that I don't know, can this change with each council? I think the answer to that would probably be not. The council could change it if it was done by ordinance, but probably not. We would establish whatever process we would want, and then we would generally keep it moving unless the council decided to change it. Is that correct?
Yeah, just the only reason I know this is Glendale, where I live. They had a fight over who would be mayor because it's rotating. So they adopted an ordinance, and then the next time, the next council decided they didn't like the ordinance, and so they blew the ordinance out of the water, and now they're writing another ordinance and another ordinance. So it's better if you can work it out yourself.
So this next question is, how are renters and mobile home parks considered as renters? And so I'm going to interpret that to mean, are mobile home parks considered renters under the census and the ACS? I think that may be capturing the question.
Oh, it's a good question. Yeah, because in the data about each map, there's percent home owner occupied and percent renter occupied housing, which is probably what's triggering this. And yes, mobile home park residents are considered renters. Yes, most of them own the house they're in, but they're renting the property it's on, so they're considered renters in that census data.
So I hope that answered the question that was asked. But so in the data that you see, the American Community Survey data, when it shows renters, mobile home parks are identified as renters, not because they don't own the coach that they live in, but they rent the land. In some cases, not all cases in Capitola. Some cases in Capitola, the underlying land is owned by the individual who lives there. Okay, so next question. Oh, this is a great question. Doug, I think you've asked it before. We have an election coming up here in November. How will it work if the winners of those elections are in the same district when this goes into effect? So how do we deal with multiple people being from the same district?
Yeah, so it is a good question. It will be interesting because when the council selects a map in an election sequence, obviously we look at the current council because that's all we know. But it could be that this November, when you're still electing citywide, you end up with two people who live right by each other. And it's just kind of the way the cards fall. There'd be no impact on their current term. You know, nothing ever cuts a term short. So they would be elected this year to a 4-year term. They would serve that 4-year term. And actually, they are at-large council members that 4-year term for the purpose of recall or vacancy appointment too. But then come 2030, if they're in a 2030 seat, they would run against each other if they wanted to, or one would run and one wouldn't. Or if they were both elected this year, this is where it gets complicated. So I'll go into this, but then you can put it out of your minds. If the two of them are elected this year, their term goes to 2030. If they happen to live in a 2028 seat, in 2028, they can choose to run for that 2028 seat midterm and then resign their seat and be sworn into that, which then creates a 2-year at-large vacancy. Or they can just stay in their 4-year term knowing that in 2030 they'll leave the council. And then if they run for the midterm vacancy, as you talked about at the past meeting, then you run into all your term limits complications. That probably counts as their second term. So yes, that it can get complicated, but yeah, sometimes it's just the way the cards fall when you adopt them, because you have to adopt a map in sequence now. You don't know who's going to win in November.
Concludes the questions.
Great, thank you for submitting the question cards.
Can I ask? So it's my understanding if you have two council members who are in a district, they get elected in 26, they're in a district in 30, they can choose not to run, just to serve for 2 more years, or they can choose to run for that district. Do either one of them need to resign, like to run, or is that a situation where the one would stay at large and one would be a district person?
It's, as far as I know, it's never been tested in court, but when this has happened, and I'm aware of it happening twice, the elected official has run for the office without resigning, and then after winning the seat, then resigned the at-large seat and been sworn in. Kind of like if you ran for county supervisor or for assembly or anything like that. It's not specified in statute that that's how it works. I don't know if you've heard of any other cases that I haven't, but that generally it's been done where you resign after you're elected if you are, unless you've heard of anything else.
Back to the example of running for county supervisor, something like that. So under the incompatible office doctrine, you lose the first seat that you held by operation of law upon assuming the second seat. And typically it's for, city council seat, water board, or other district, but in this case, it's council and council, but you can't hold two positions with one body.
Yeah, you do have to resign before you take the oath for the new term.
I guess I have a follow-up for that. I think we already talked about this, but you could still potentially run for the mayoral seat while you're seated on council. And then if you won, you would resign.
If you're in the middle of, so 2 years into your 4-year term on council, yes,
Yeah.
you could run for mayor. And that's a good point. That's another office. So then if you won it, you'd resign your council seat, be sworn in the mayor's seat. If you didn't, this is why I say hopefully the campaign stays civil, because if you didn't, the person who beat you is sitting next to you on the dais for 2 years. So hopefully everyone runs civil campaigns.
Got it. Thank you. Any other follow-ups? Okay, great. We can go to public comment if anybody wishes to come up. Feel free to state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Mayor and council. First, I want to say thank you for having the in-person meeting. That was awesome, and I think we did get good turnout. We had some good questions. We had some good back and forth. I just want to reiterate what I said last time. Going from electing all of you every 2 years to the potential of only getting to vote for one person every 4 years is just not what Capitola is all about. So I'm really, really, really hoping that with all of the community input that you've received, that 4 districts with an elected mayor is the direction that you wind up going, and that mayor have term limits addressed so that they have a 2-year term, which gives you some consistency, and it allows all of our residents to vote in every election. I would hope that we could figure out how to get that done so that it goes into effect with the districting in 2028. And I know there's a lot of complications with the 2 versus 3 and how the sequencing goes. And since we can't know that until we have a map, I still hope that you make the number of districts decision and start that direction tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Esta es nuestra comunidad, no la de ellos. This is our community, not theirs. Mayor Morgan, members of council, my name is Mark Warshaw, and I've lived in Capitola for 22 years. I spoke here 2 weeks ago and made the legal case about this redistricting. Tonight, I want to make a different case about how this council has conducted itself and why the fear driving this process is no longer justified. A law firm from Malibu that has never walked our beach, never attended a community meeting, never knocked on a single door, has inserted itself into our democracy, and this council has let them. We're being divided by outsiders who have no stake in this community. On the morning of April 30th vote, former Mayor Rick Ruth submitted a letter citing the Supreme Court's Cale ruling issued the day before and asked you to pause and seek an independent legal opinion. That letter is in your own public record. It was ignored. No independent legal analysis of Cale has been prepared or presented to this council to this day. The residents of the city were informed of this decision after it was made, not before. That's not disclosure. That's a done deal dressed up as a process. 3 members of this community have filed Public Records Act requests demanding to see all communications between council members and Shankman and Hughes, including on personal devices. Those requests include a demand for sworn declarations from each of you confirming your searches were complete. That's the minimum transparency for the people that elected you. So far, you haven't met that commitment. This council has been told that fighting redistricting costs millions. That's false. For less than already spent, a competent attorney armed with Cale could dismiss or delay this entire demand while the constitutional question is resolved in California courts. Finally, the candidate whose loss is the actual factual basis of the Shankman letter, Enrico Domo, is on the record opposing this redistricting. The man whose name was used by Shankman without his consent to justify this legal threat is standing with his community against it. When the person at the center of this says no, you should listen. As a veteran, I took a sacred oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That oath never expires. You took nearly the same sacred oath. What's happening in this chamber tonight is a domestic threat to constitutional government, and your oath demands that you do the right thing. Esta es nuestra comunidad. Ahora actúen como tal. This is our community. Now act like it. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Hi, Council. Cami Corvin, small business owner and resident of Capitola. Thank you for bringing up the mailing situation. We proudly have been able to change our driver's licenses to Capitola. That was kind of exciting for us. Big day on the hill there. So I'm trying to encourage the other residents to do the same thing. But I would ask that maybe staff might consider talking with the post office. They are becoming better at it, and I know that sometimes when you have a shipping address and you put in 95062, sometimes it allows you to use Capitola, other times it allows you to use Santa Cruz. So when we start talking about the residency issues, I think this might be very important, and it might behoove us to go a little bit further. And I'm glad that Councilwoman Westman brought up and wanted to put on the agenda is about the residency issue. I think that there should be some clarification on that. Time limits, term limits, whatever you want to call it for that. I know that gets into a legal situation for Mark there, which I'm sure he has nothing else better to do, but so I thank you for that. Also, one of my questions that I had earlier, and it was brought up, was recusal, but conflict. And so I think I'm going to go a little bit further other than the 4 pivots of the conflict of interest that Mark had brought up earlier. If for some reason we have districting, and let's just say in my neighborhood of Castle Mobile Home Estates, that's one district, and right across from Capitola Road is another district. And so then we come up with the mall situation, and things have to be determined on that. How does one recuse himself from that? Is there a certain distance that has to be done? Is it 500 feet? Is it 1,000 feet? Is it a block? Is it 2 feet? I don't think there's, that I know of, has been any specific answer to that. And so I would like to have an answer for that. And I think that that's a really great transparency question that a lot of the residents would like to have. So thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Thank you. My name's Cheryl, and I appreciate the work that's been done by everybody around this. I do appreciate the consultant. I think he's doing a fabulous job. I want to address something that most of us agree upon, that our city of Capitola is being accused of disenfranchising its citizens by what seems to be a gangster law firm, Shankman and Hughes of Malibu. It's a lie. The law firm says California is hostile, Capitola is hostile to its citizens. This word is theirs, not mine, hostile. It's a lie. And the accusation is standing uncontested as the city tries to contort itself into detrimental districts. Slow down, if possible. Do due diligence to look for other options. The city deserves to know all resources have been considered. Dig and dig and dig. Find the loopholes. It's worth the time and cost to avoid breaking our city. Hire an outside counsel. No offense to you. We need more. We need a counsel also familiar with this level of extortion that would be specific to our small city, unusual city. Talk to other cities fighting districting. Santa Monica, Huntington Beach. I know everybody's losing. I heard from the consultant. It's an uphill battle. Create an ad hoc committee to investigate other possibilities. Use other resources. We have a full community here of minds, legal minds. Ask, plead. Do not go on the one premise that the only way is to comply and pay the demand of ransom. Pause and pause and pause. Look to other directions. Information is surfacing that deserves research. Then present it to us, the public. Capitola challenged the lies about our city. Stand up to the bullies. And Mayor, please consider writing a letter to our community explaining what is happening, this extortion, the position we're in. We're talking about districting over and over again. That's the headline. Talk about why. Please let our community really know. If we have to go to districting, I'm for 4 mayor at large. I want 2 years, and I do not want anybody appointed. I want special elections. Put it in your budget to pay for these special elections. We deserve to vote.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Buenas noches, alcaldesa Morgan y miembros de consejo. Mi nombre es Mark Esquivel. Soy español, indígena y mexicano. Mi familia ha estado en esta tierra durante 516 años, desde que mis antepasados llegaron de España al Nuevo Mundo. Y tengo familia de Oaxaca, México. Esta noche, yo emito un voto completo por cada asiente de este consejo. Bajo el sistema de distritos, mi voto queda diluida y una quinta parte de lo que debe ser. Una oficina de abogados de Malibu no tiene derecho a hacerme eso. Y me ofendo profundamente que alguien lo entiende. No nos sentimos privados de nuestro derecho al voto por el sistema electoral de Capitola. No estamos privados de nuestro derecho por este proceso. Good evening, Mayor Morgan and members of the council. With respect, I delivered my opening remarks in Spanish because this is my heritage. Under Louisiana versus Calais 146, Supreme Court 1131 and 1152, decided on April 2026, the Equal Protection Clause heavily disfavors the use of race and redistricting. The state could not prove VRA strictly required them to draw this specific majority-minority district. The map constituted unconstitutional racial gerrymandering. Jesus A. Osete, Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General to the DOJ, filed on May 22nd, 2026. United States of America, Plaintiff Intervenor, and David Tangipa et al. In that case, the mapmaker, Paul Mitchell, made several public statements confirming that he, quote, intentionally and directly used race and Hispanic demographics as criteria in designing the map. Most notably, he publicly boasted that the, quote, number one thing that he first started to think about was drawing a replacement Latino minority district in the middle of Los Angeles. We raise these concerns respectfully and in the spirit of protecting the city. Before proceeding, we ask council to pause and obtain an independent legal opinion because this process touches on and has the potential to violate the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause, race-based districting without proof of intentional discrimination under Calais. 15th Amendment, race-based abridgment of the right to vote. California Constitution, Article 1, Section 7, Equal Protection Clause. Article 2, Section 2, right to vote. Brown Act, Government Code, Section 54950 through
So much. That was your 3 minutes.
Defective public notice.
Thank you. I appreciate
Civil
it.
Code of Civil Procedures, Section 526, wasteful
Sorry, your 3
expenditure of
minutes are
public
up.
funds.
Thank you.
Fair Maps Act, Evidence Code 21130. Before I go, if you could give this to council. This is a petition,
Thank you.
signatures of all your voters that oppose this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Morgan and members of the City Council. My name is Ala Mia Basaldua, a tongue twister of a name. I am a proud resident of Capitola. I am here because this community deserves a voice and decision that will fundamentally change how we govern ourselves. Let me be direct. This push to divide Capitola into districts did not come from the people of Capitola. It came from the law firm in Malibu, located 400 miles from here, threatening litigation. And this council, understandably concerned about legal costs, moved to comply. But I ask you, should the structure of our democracy be dictated by an outside attorney with financial interest in the outcome? Capitola is 1.6 square miles, fewer than 10,000 residents. We walk the same beach. We are neighbors, not a sprawling city requiring separate geographic representation. Where is the evidence that Latino residents have not been able to elect candidates of their choice? Where are Capitola residents who said they feel unrepresented? Did they file this complaint? No, an outside law firm did. I am an American citizen originally from Japan. I am part of Capitola's Asian community. We are 4.4% of the city's population. Nobody is filing lawsuits on our behalf. Nobody is drawing district lines to give us a voice, which we get overlooked a lot. And yet, I stand here, speaking at this council because that is what at-large elections allow. They allow every resident of every background to participate equally. Districts don't protect the overlooked. They simply decide to get to who gets protected and who doesn't. And I want to flag something urgent. In April, just days ago, the United States Supreme Court ruled in Louisiana versus Callis that drawing electoral districts based on primarily on race is unconstitutional and racial gerrymander, violating the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause. The legal foundation of this threat may be crumbling. The Supreme Court is moving in the opposite direction from what this law firm is demanding. Before Capitola restructures its entire election system, it deserves to know the law is being rewritten in real time. I am handing each of you a one-page legal briefing on that ruling and what it means for Capitola. I urge
Thank you so much.
this.
That was the 3 minutes. Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am here to discuss a couple issues that I think are important with regards to the districting. So the first one is something I've emailed about, and that is that I feel very strongly that we should be moving to 4 districts and an elected mayor versus a 5-district system. And really the reason is that I believe it is critically important for all residents to be able to vote for the mayor. The mayor is a key position in our city. I think it's taken on more responsibility in recent past. I think it's critically important as we face more and more regional issues related to transportation, the coast, development. We need economic development in our community. So I'm really very pro the ability for all residents to elect a mayor. I know there's been comments that we've always had a rotating mayor. That's part of who we are traditionally. But if we move to districting, it's a whole new ballgame. And I think it's incredibly important that all residents have the opportunity to elect the mayor. I also think just in terms of the democratic process, it gives more opportunities for each resident to have the chance to vote for a district person to represent them as well as a mayor. So they each resident then has 2 people that they're having the opportunity to vote for. I like the idea of a longer term, the 2 to 4 years, because I do think that when you're mayor, there's a learning curve, and I think it's important for continuity that we have some experience in that position. And I also think that the idea of having 4 districts where each district is approximately 1,750 people versus 1,400 people, voters in these districts, is important as well. The second issue that I want to bring up is really just related to how this gets rolled out. And I know there's been a lot of questions, and it is confusing. I've read through all the materials and I've been to most of the meetings, but the issue of whether we would start the mayorship in 2028 or in 2030. And I've also given that a lot of thought, and I think it's important that we would start that mayor election concurrent with district elections in 2028. Aligning these changes would create a cleaner transition, minimize voter confusion, provide leadership continuity during implementation, and immediately establish the governance structure the council has determined best serves Capitola. And then lastly, I guess I'm running out of time, I want to reiterate some points that have been made about residency. I do think it's critical, based on what happened in our city last year, that we address that issue as a council and that we come up with a policy that makes sense and would benefit all our residents. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would anybody else wish to speak? All right. Seeing none, we'll come back to council. Comments, deliberation?
I think after this, we might have some more questions. I'd like to start with a question.
Yeah, that's fine.
This would be for our city attorney. Based on the Supreme Court ruling last month, if case law comes up or something that will wipe it out, will we at any time be able to stop the process? Since we're voting on all this stuff to happen in 2028, would we be able to just stop it if there were some decisions that were handed down?
Yes, if there's a ruling that strikes down the CVRA, that would change the legal landscape. But that has not happened yet.
That's a good benefit for us, seeing how we're not going to be moving on until 2028. So thank you for that. I'll let other council members have some questions before I go into any deliberation.
Don't have questions.
I have a couple of follow-up questions, just what I heard from the comments from the community. One was regarding a PRA that might have come in about asking for us to documentation. Has there been PRAs that have been issued that are going through the process right now through city staff?
There are 2 public records requests on file. I believe one of them arrived yesterday, specifically that was mentioned this evening. So staff is processing those requests.
I mean, that's just a transparent process that we have, that once they come in, they go through a process at staff, and then they come to the council, and then we have a certain many days to respond back to the city, and then they get back to the community member, whoever did the PRA. Is that correct?
Correct. So staff does evaluate each request and the nature of the request and where the requested records are being, requested from, for example, like people or responsive parties. And so if a request identifies, in general, if a request identifies council members need to search personal devices, like for example, if a request was to seek text messages on council devices related to a certain topic, relating to city business, I should say, then staff would work to disseminate a request to council members to search their devices. The 2 requests are still in progress, so.
I appreciate that. I just know last year, I know we had a lot of PRAs, and I think the process was well vetted out by the city, and it went through, and many of us had them, and so we're very used to them. But I just want to make sure that it's very clear that the city takes PRAs very seriously. Obviously, it's a law and everything, and it's very transparent process, and it does take some time. And so I just want to make sure that that was very clear. The next thing I heard, and maybe more sorry for our city attorney sitting here, but talk to the city manager. When we hear about, a second legal review and something like what does that look like?
So the city council could direct staff to procure a second legal opinion. We would need to identify a budget, but the city certainly could sort of ask for a peer review and we could obtain outside legal. I imagine actually a city attorney could probably, his office probably could do that as well. And maybe Doug has something to add.
I think, I think my question was just as it's an option for second review, but with our demographer who has, maybe you could elaborate on how you've seen maybe second opinions or your experience. And then, sorry to ask two questions, Doug. I also would like you just to take a second for our community. I know you spend a lot of time at the other meetings talking about your role in this process, that you're not connected to this process. And I think it's just very clear. So when you respond to that question, I think it's first to say how you're separated from the group. I think it's very clear. So when you give your response, it's not connected to a support of a certain thing. It's just giving your experience, and we appreciate that.
And the reason I said I had an idea on the independent opinion, which is there's actually Huntington Beach, the city, and the plaintiffs have actually filed public briefs. The city saying, like the resident said, Calais invalidates CVRA, and the plaintiff saying, no, it doesn't. So I can share those with the city attorney, and we can post those. I mean, they're kind of out there and they're free. And in early July, Santa Monica's judge has ordered them to file a brief about why they think Calais invalidates CVRA. So those opinions are out there. We can post them, the two that are, then they're public. So we can post that. And like I said, no surprise, the city of Huntington Beach believes that Calais invalidates CVRA and the plaintiffs do not. So that there's no definitive thing out there. But that may be the easiest way to get independent, the two perspectives without having to pay anybody any.
And that's something that you could facilitate in getting those to our city so they can be posted?
Yeah, I have them. I can send them to you without a trouble.
And then
Mr. Transform can grab them too, but I'll send them over.
Could you elaborate on the first question? That'd help us.
Yeah, the question comes up because we do a lot of these. We work with over 80%, probably about 85% of the jurisdictions making the change. People always ask, are you in league with Shankman, doing this together to make money? And no, definitely not. Just ask him. He really doesn't like me. Because, we actually make much more money if the cities or the jurisdictions fight and go to court. But because then we're the expert witnesses, which is much more expensive and much more lucrative for us. As I say, I live in a family house in Glendale. Mr. Shankman lives in Malibu. If I was in this for the money, I'm on the wrong side. But this is the side, I like working with local governments. So I'm doing this because someone needs to help the jurisdictions go through this. When cities decide to fight, I work with those cities, but no, I have no relationship with Mr. Shankman. He can't stand the fact that I speak in Sacramento about the problems with these laws and how they hit cities that they didn't intend to hit. And he keeps saying, how can you be against a law that's making you money? I say, because it's a bad law. So definitely not it. I know him. We cross paths across the witness stand frequently, but I am not in partnership or any relationship with him at all.
Yeah, thank you. I've heard that, but again, we have new audience all the time, and I think it's just key. Just to take that one step further, when you say when you're in Sacramento, so you're in Sacramento advocating at the state level on how this is a concern to local small cities like ours, or?
Yeah. I'm not a lobbyist myself, but I work with Cal Cities. I work with the California Special Districts Association. I work with the California School Boards Association, all to help them figure out what the bills mean and how they can propose changes to make it better for local governments.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. Sorry, one more question, follow up to our city attorney. So please correct me if I'm wrong, when we are voluntarily doing this process at this time, and if we went through this process and we decided after SCOTUS comes down with the ruling or something like that, since it wasn't enacted from a judge, it could be brought back to at-large districts. What happens if we decide to fight this and a judge made a ruling that is going to be districted? What happens after that period of time?
So you're asking about what happens if the city chooses to not convert to districts and instead chooses to fight?
I'm sorry. If we district voluntarily,
okay,
and we decide at a later date, since we voluntarily, could we go back to an at-large if rulings came down from, my follow-up is that if we didn't and a judge, we fought this today hypothetically, and the judge made a ruling that you are districted, could that be undone?
Yes, if the legal landscape does change, the city could reassess. Part of this exercise is a risk assessment issue. The city could reassess and pivot accordingly.
Okay, and just one more time, sometimes I clear for record. Cities that you've seen that have fought this from a monetary standpoint, it runs into the millions of dollars in time frame wise that you've seen the fights. Like, is it a 3-year process before they ever get to a ruling, or 4? What's the common?
It takes a while. I mean, legal proceedings are slow. Yeah. So the one I often cite is Santa Clara, just over the hill. When they got sued, they decided to fight it, but they actually directed their city attorney to make a legal statement against it, but a minimal one. They asked the city attorney, do this as cheaply as you possibly can, make our points, don't hire a lot of experts, do this inexpensively. And between their case and their first round appeal, they spent $1.8 million. And that's on direction to do this as cheaply as you possibly can. So, and that's just their defense. That's not the settlement they had to do. So it's expensive. I'm trying to think of timeline. It takes, Huntington Beach has certainly been in the trial process or in the court process for a year. It takes at least a year. Santa Monica in April hit the 10-year point in their case because they've been all the way up to the state Supreme Court, and now they've been referred all the way back down to trial court to start over. So it can go on for a long, long time. But yeah, I think Modesto was a constitutional case. They didn't get into the merits, so I don't know the exact time, but it's at least a year.
Yeah, I just appreciate, I try to, when we hear these questions, I know when we get to a council level meeting, there's sometimes they're not the back and forth. I think it's just good to clarify some of the questions that we hear from the community. So when somebody says, why don't you fight it? And then we hear numbers of 1.8, $2 million, 10-year fight. I think it's good just for us to have that reiterated. So I appreciate your time and the city attorney in responding to those questions. So thank you.
The one other question that was asked, just real quick, was how many feet is the financial conflict of interest? Well, I think it's 500. I don't know that. I don't know if you know that offhand.
500 for presumed, and then 1,000 out, and it's a different analysis, and very fact intensive, and you bring it up with projects, contracts, things like that.
Can I ask one question? So we know that there are 2 cities in California right now that have legal cases going. Is there any city or school district or special district that has won so far?
No. Everyone is lost.
And the numbers are in the hundreds. 200 and something.
Well, in terms of getting letters and making the change, we're around 700 or 800 now of all types of jurisdictions. About 5 or 6 have actually gone to court and started the fight against it, at least, and everyone's lost. Santa Monica's lost. They won at the appeals court, but then that was vacated, and they lost at the state Supreme Court. So everyone's lost so far that's gone to court.
Thank you.
I just had a follow-up. This might be for the city attorney. I know there's been requests to pause and wait and, dig deeper, but we did. Can you explain sort of that safe harbor timeline? I know it's on the FAQs, but maybe just for a little overview of where we're kind of standing right now.
Yes, so procedurally, a CVRA claimant, once they tender a demand letter similar to the one that we received in April, that gets the clock going, and there's a first safe harbor window to adopt a resolution of intent signaling. We received your letter, and we're going to start this process. So the city has already cleared that hurdle. After that, the city has 90 days to adopt maps get everything together. That's, consider the maps and all of the issues that we're working on now. And the statute also allows an opportunity to come to an agreement with the claimant for additional time beyond that 90-day window. So we did receive an additional 30 days on top of that 90. The safe harbor provisions are designed to keep exposure to the claimant's attorney's fees low and to place a statutory cap on what the claimant's attorney can receive as part of this process. Outside of the safe harbor is where you start to see exposure increase and costs start to climb. Some of the other jurisdictions that Doug has referenced, for example, were outside the safe harbor window. So that's when experts are hired and more research needs to be done, and again, costs start to climb outside of that safe harbor.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, that was my follow-up question. Do you want to start with any comments, deliberation?
I think we've outlined it pretty well, that we're in a position where the city has to decide what we're going to do and if we're going to move on to districting. I think that's where we're at now. And so I think we need to start looking at 5 versus 4 for a lot of the reasons that the people were talking about. 4 districts and an elected mayor that everybody gets to vote. Every election is very important. So if we're leaning that way, I would be in favor of 4 districts, 1 elected mayor, and the mayor be elected for 2 years. Thank you.
So this process has given us a unique opportunity to think about how we want to shape our elected representation in Capitola. And to get to the heart of it all, I think we have to ask ourselves, what's the goal we're trying to accomplish? If the primary goal is to maximize neighborhood representation, then 5 districts is the stronger model because every council member is directly accountable to a specific area of the city. If the goal is continuity of leadership with a city-wide voice, then 4+1 seems to make sense. I can certainly see the pros and cons of both. Capitola has had a long history of rotating mayorship that ensures our elected leaders get to participate fully in city governance. As we're being forced to transition to the district-based elections, I think it's important to hold on to this 70+ year tradition. And based on the history of the council members who have been elected in the past, I think the main problem is ensuring equal representation for residents in all of the different parts of Capitola. I agree that having 1 elected official accountable to the entire community can help maintain that broader perspective. However, my concern about having an at-large mayor is the power one person would have to dictate the direction of the city for potentially 8 years. Also, I feel at-large elections generally favor well-resourced candidates and are left to those with significant financial resources, greater name recognition, and more time to campaign. Having a rotational mayor with 5 districts is more democratic and ensures equal opportunity and equal representation. I do think continuity matters, especially as the city navigates long-term issues like housing and coastal resilience and public safety, budgets, and regional partnerships. As we've heard tonight, we can adopt an ordinance to have our selected mayor serve a 2-year term. Having 5 districts with a mayor selected among the council for this 2-year term will preserve district representation while also providing that continuity in the leadership this community would like to see. Half Moon Bay is about the same size as Capitola. That's one example of a smaller coastal city that uses district elections with a council-selected mayor, and that structure has allowed the city to maintain district representation without creating a separate citywide elected office. So it's obvious I favor the 5-district composition. I think Mr. McGuire submitted a great 5-district map. There were 2 districts on each side of Soquel Creek with 1 coastal district. I think residents in the 2 halves of Capitola are subject to drastically different environments, with the eastern half defined by lower density housing, smaller and slower streets, and tourism to Capitola Village, and the western half defined by higher density housing, larger and faster streets, and the 41st Avenue commercial corridor. If we decide to go to 4 districts and an at-large mayor, I think it's essential that we have 2 districts on each side of the Soquel Creek. And I think that would provide equal representation for 2 of the different sides of the city.
Great, thank you. Go ahead.
Well, I have a few comments I'd like to make first. One, sitting up here is, you have to make some difficult decisions. And unfortunately, with this decision, I think we're faced with a bad and a very bad decision. And the bad is that I don't think Capitola would have chosen on its own to go to district elections. But we're caught up in the state law, we're caught up in the letter that has been sent to us. And for me, a very bad decision would be for us to say, no, we're going to fight this because, in all honesty, we are a small town and we don't have the financial resources to do that without, it harming the city itself. I mean, it's potentially that our city could go bankrupt and no longer, be functioning the way it is now if we got into a protracted, long legal fight. It's clear to me that if we go the direction of having district elections and the law changes, as our city attorney has said, that the council absolutely has the capability of coming back and saying, okay, the law's changed, let's ask the community, do they want to go back to at-large elections, and let the community decide if that's what they want to do. So I feel it's, I don't know exactly how to say this, it is difficult because we have to decide what is best for our town, not only so that we're completely transparent and democratic, and I think that, that's something that we want to be. We've stated over and over that the new maps that are drawn are not going to be based on race. They're going to be based on neighborhoods and having the areas be cohesive, have as many clear boundaries like major streets. We're going to do a job to come up with the best maps that we can come up with. For me, I've thought about this a lot. I've thought about 5 districts. I've thought about 4 districts and an elected mayor. And when I come down to it, I'm leaning toward the 4 districts and an elected mayor, partly because I think it makes the district slightly larger. I think that is going to become important, as Councilmember Clark brought up. You're going to have your elected representative living in your district, and so there are going to be some things they can't participate on. But if it's a larger district, hopefully most of the things that come up in their district, they will be able to be involved in. And I think having, a 2-year elected mayor does give the citizens the opportunity every 2 years when there's an election to vote on that critical position. Some people have tried to persuade me that, we ought to have a 4-year mayor. And I think 2 is the right thing. It lets the community decide who they want to be their mayor for those 2 years. So that's the direction I'm leaning in. And I think for all of us, myself and my fellow council members, we've all spent a lot of time talking to people we know in other cities who've gone through this process, other city attorneys that we know, and, trying to deeply educate ourselves about what you can and cannot do. And even though, I personally would like to see Capitola stay at large, I don't think that's a viable choice right now. So, as I said, I would be in favor of 4 districts and an elected mayor. I'd like to see us start in 28, because I think when the districts start, the mayor should start.
Thank you. I think it's clear I think it's good just to go back and reflect. We heard about representation and we talked about districts and areas and everything. I think we need to step back and look to make sure that we all really identify what we're really talking about. Our previous council that we had before this one was set immediately, we had a council member, Pedersen, who lived over by the mall. We had, so if you really break it down, we had Councilmember Clark, we had Councilmember Pedersen, we had 2 council members, so on that, if we call it that side of the Wharf Road, and we had 2 council members in the Cliffwood Heights area, and we had 1 council member who represented the village, if you want to call it. So I look at saying, that looked like we kind of internally district ourselves going through a process. You look at this council before there was 2 council members appointed. We had Councilmember Orbach on by the mall, if you wanted to call it. We have Councilmember Clark, who's elected up off the Clares, myself, who's elected, who live in Cliffwood Heights, Upper Village. We had council members resign and leave, and we have appointed a council member who represents Riverview, and we have our mayor. So it's not like, I think sometimes I hear the conversation go that representation in this side of town, that side of town. If you just go back and you can look at the people who have run in the last 2 elections, there has been coverage around the city. So I don't feel that this issue is something about not representing a certain part of the thing, or all the council members lived on one street. And I think that has been exacerbated a little bit during this whole process, that there is more of an issue than what has appeared just by how people have been elected. Not that districting is not right, but just how the elections processes played out the last 2 elections. You can see it has been representation all across the city. So that was my comments. I think was just make sure that be clarified. I heard that there was a motion on the table from Councilmember Clark about 4 and 1. And then I heard Councilmember Westman with a second with 4 and 1. What was 28? Was that accepted by Councilmember Clark?
If it's going to be a motion, then absolutely.
Oh, I thought, I'm sorry. Okay, I thought, yeah, okay, I'm sorry if it wasn't motion. No, then no question. And so I was just clarifying about the 28 or the 30. Sorry about that if I thought there was a motion on the table. But so I don't have any additional questions other than I support the 4 and 1. I support having the leadership start in 28. And it really comes down to making sure our community can always have a vote in every 2 years, and having the larger size of districts, even though they're not by very much, will help making sure that there's full representation. Thank you.
Thank you all for the comments. Yeah, I think we all feel similarly in that it never feels good to have your hands tied or feel pushed against a wall. But I think in regards to what Councilmember Westman said, there's bad and then there's really, really bad. And not to say that districting overall is going to be bad. I want to maybe touch on some positives that could come out of this. I think it was Councilmember Orbach who mentioned it is hard to run a campaign that's citywide. And so if you're running within your smaller domain, you can probably talk to more people. You can probably touch more issues and really hear closer to what is happening around you and what people nearby. You might even meet your neighbor. That's wild, you know? Like in this day and age, that's kind of few and far between. There's a lot of screen time. There's not a lot of one-on-one. So I think that could be a benefit. I'm not saying that this is perfect for Capitola or that we would have gone in this direction on our own. But I just want us to try to look at the positive of this issue. Again, more voting options. I think we've heard from the public that that is important and that that's what we're looking for in order to keep this as fair for all as possible. At first, I really wanted 5 districts. All I've known is a rotating mayor and vice mayor, and it has seemed to really work for the way that we sit up here. I would hope that if we have an elected mayor, that person doesn't assume some higher power or some higher role and that's why they run for mayor. That would be a shame, and that would again not be representative of Capitola. So putting that out there, I think the 4 and 1 makes sense based on what we've talked about and what the community has said. I I would think that a 2-year limit would be good for the mayorship. And I also agree that starting in 2028 to try to keep, however we're going to do this sequencing that I'm not in charge of figuring out, but if we can align with that, that's great. I think that is a good direction to start on tonight. I think we've also discussed a lot of spider legs out there that we need to kind of conceptualize and figure out moving forward what that looks like, residency and things like that. So I think we have a lot of good things on the table. I don't know if anybody's interested in making a motion or adding anything to moving forward.
I think Councilmember Clark can make a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion of 4 districts, 1 mayor elected at large, serving 2 years, and to begin in 2028.
I'll second that motion.
Great. We have a motion and a second. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Clark.
Aye.
Councilmember Orbach. Aye. Councilor Westman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Jensen.
Aye.
And Mayor Morgan.
Aye. Thank you. Passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody in the community who has come out for this issue. I know it's not easy, but this is Capitola. We're in it together. Thank you very much. Let's take a short restroom break. It's 7:40. We'll be back at 7:45. Thank you.
We were planning for the 17th at the community center in Treasure Cove. We did have to push out. There's been construction delays. We're going to reschedule after the summer break, probably picking a date in the middle of August. We'll work with council and Friends of Santa Cruz County Parks to find a good date. We're all disappointed. We have communicated that to the Friends of Santa Cruz County Parks, who raised $1 million for that park, and they are understanding. So just wanted to make that announcement public. I also want to announce kind of some fun news is that for the park at Rispin Mansion, the brick sale is going live tomorrow. So if folks want to buy themselves a brick, supplies are going to be limited. You can pick them up by going to links from the city's website. And so I encourage everyone to act fast, purchase your bricks early and often. There is no limit. There is a letter limit. There's a letter limit. Your bricks will be printed exactly as you enter them on the internet. So do your proofreading carefully. They will be in all caps so that capitalization doesn't become an issue. We went through a lot of scenarios planning this one out. But there is a specific letter limit for each brick. So if you had a message, you wanted to span multiple bricks.
Yeah. That our bricks be put together as one big.
No.
Well, how's my message going to be if it's on 3 or 4 bricks? I got a lot to say.
Think of it like sort of like a Fibonacci sequence.
Okay.
People would have to be able to figure it out as how they incorporate.
Okay, I'll have to be more clever than maybe I really am.
Those are the announcements I had. I think Chief Ryan has another one.
All right, good evening. Just one quick comment. I had a meeting this afternoon with Caltrans and the RTC in anticipation of the Bay Avenue on and off-ramp closures. So we've been happy that they were willing to push it out after the wharf to wharf because we were moving a lot of people through Capitola that day. So we're anticipating that on July 27th, I wrote this down to make sure I didn't get it wrong, the southbound Bay Avenue off-ramp is expected to be closed for approximately 4 to 5 months based on the amount of work that off-ramp has to be done. And traffic will be diverted to SoCal Avenue and then Park Avenue. I think people make their choice depending on where they want to end up. And then as far as the other two, they made it really clear that the Bay Avenue northbound on and off ramps, the other off ramps are expected they will not be closed until that off ramp is reopened. The construction that needs to be done on those ramps is a lot less. And so the closures won't be as long. However, they're not going to close everything at one time. So We've been tracking it, obviously from a public safety standpoint. We want to know when things are going to be closed. So that is the update that I have for now.
Thank you.
So do we have an update on Park Avenue and how much longer it's going to be closed going south?
Park Avenue going south, he did provide a tentative update of it being open by the end of the year. They have asphalt to pour and, right. So by the end of the year, they're anticipating that one would be open. They would all then be open.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it south?
It's the southbound on-ramp. No, going on to, do I have that one wrong?
No, you have that correct, but more precisely, they were saying 5 months. Which is before the end of the year, but a little bit sooner.
Comments?
Comments. Want to remind everybody that this Saturday is the 19th Annual Classic Car Show put on by the Capitola Foundation, the POA. So little road closures, but a lot of good cars and good fun. See everybody out there.
Comments?
I was just going to say that I attended the AMBAG meeting last night in Monterey, and we adopted the Metropolitan Regional Transportation Plan that goes to 2050 for the entire region. And one of the interesting things about it is that it predicts that our population in all 3 counties is going to continue to decline. Because there really aren't the job creation taking place in our area. And so there was quite a lengthy discussion, mainly led by the 2 supervisors from Monterey County, about trying to work on and coming up with a better system about where housing should be located, because we're not achieving one of our main goals, which is to reduce vehicle miles traveled when we're locating housing in places where no new jobs are being created. Certainly there's a backlog of some housing that needs to be filled, but a lot of the new housing needs to go, and it needs to go in coordination with jobs. So they're going to start looking at that before they start the next RENA cycle on housing numbers. And that's it for now.
Yeah, thank you. Just a request. I think there's been some new employees hired in the city. I think we have a new lifeguard, police officers. I haven't been met the new building official. So, I mean, I know it's hard for us to have them come at night or something like that, but even a quick slide show, I mean, we walk around our community to recognize who they are and welcome them would be, I think, a nice thing. So I don't know if that could be just something that's brought up, just be in the future, that we could just have a couple slides and introduction to who they are so we can welcome them to our group. Hopefully that's not a big ask. The other thing would be, I attended the RCC meeting today, which was great to have a unanimous vote on our request that went forward to them on the reallocation of our funding. And so it was nice to see that the RTC commissioners completely supported Capitola's vision of what our council would like to see, the reallocation of funding to look at funding these other projects that are going on in the city, especially one that maybe with the study of the Capitola Trestle will be something that the whole entire community as a county will benefit from. And so with that approval, I think there'll be a contract that'll be generated and brought back to the council. But you just see when you have a unanimous vote from a commission like that represents the whole entire county unanimously behind something, it's nice to see that vision come together. My next thing was I struggled a lot with our last council meeting with all these different traffic and all these different projects that were going on. And I think they're amazing. Some of them I just rattled through, 41st above the freeway, 41st, below the corridor study. We have the Cliffwood Heights infill project. We have the, Bay Avenue project. We have Cliffs Drive. We're talking about Stockton Bridge. We have Ecology Action ATP grant project that's going to be starting up. And I see all these projects coming to us in segments, and then I see the community activate and look at just that as a project and how that doesn't work or how they think it's going to work, but then there's not even going to talk about how that's really going to connect when you get off to the next street. And it just seemed like what we're lacking is like a master plan for our city on how all these projects come together. I didn't participate in the Bay Avenue thing, but Bay Avenue roundabouts are on. Community comes up, said they're off, and they're off, and then there's talk maybe they're back on. And I just think there's. I heard a comment made about timing, and I heard a comment made about maybe rush. And I'm out in the community a lot, and I think other council members are too. One thing I've never heard our community say is that our city moves slow. I have heard lately that they think we might be moving too fast and rushing to get this grant and then rushing to get that grant. And I think if we took a pause and stepped back and looked at things from a master plan standpoint. And so with that, I was wondering if any of my other council members felt the same way about this and could support the idea that I don't want to slow up our progress, but I want to make sure that it's all concise and interwoven together and that we could come back and look at laying out how our ATP is going to run on top of all these other projects. The ATP grant was over $500,000 investment that is going to be into visualizing of how our community is going to come together. So I was wondering if anybody's interested in having that as a more in-depth conversation before we look at all these other little projects in bits and pieces. Those are all my comments, and I'd just like to see if anybody would support to have that brought forward.
So you wanted to come back as an agenda item to have us have a list of the projects and show how they fit together?
Yeah, I just think an overlap on, and not that we're making a decision on that, but to show like the ATP grant's going to run 8 months, but our 41st corridor is going to be this, and we have Claire's and maybe a crosswalk on Central. How's that going to come all together? So we kind of look at transportation as a whole. And so that's why I thought it should be agendized and have a larger discussion as a council that we call sharing.
Yeah, I think I could support something coming back for a list. For me, I would like to see something that includes sort of blocks of time. We plan on doing this year. We plan on doing that the following year. How they're going to integrate together, because we've talked a little bit about maybe doing a crosswalk on Bay Avenue. Do we want to be doing the crosswalk on Bay Avenue when something else is happening at the intersections of Bay and the freeway? Just sort of the timing of how those projects come together.
Are we other people's thoughts, sir? Other council members?
I'm hearing two slightly different asks. One is sort of, I think, Councilmember Westman, it sounds like you're talking more about sort of the timing of construction, to try to look into the phasing of the known construction projects and how they phase out.
Yeah, I'm interested in knowing, is this project going to be being done while some other project's going to be done? I'll use the example. If we were working on the Stockton Avenue Bridge, would we want to do something on Cliff Drive at the same time, or should we do those separately? One first, how should they fit together? Seems like we have had a lot sort of going on, and we do have overlapping plans that are being drawn up. We're talking about some plans with one, set of money, and other plans with another set of money.
Yeah, I appreciate the city manager pointing out maybe a little bit of a different ask. I totally agree with your comments about the schedule. I was looking at the interconnection on how these look. We have an ATP grant that they'll be doing a study, but at the same time, we're designing, council is designing live in action what Bay Avenue is going to look like. And then we have Claire's, and maybe the ATP come back with the idea at the same time that we're not even hearing. So how does that just come all together? And maybe there is, and that just hasn't been communicated clearly.
Maybe like a master transportation plan that lays it all out.
That's and I'm not trying to belabor a whole bunch of staff's time, but it just seems like there's so many things that are going on that kind of don't interconnect. And so I think that's all I was looking for.
And maybe staff could sort of make an attempt at some of those ideas. And when we bring it back on an agenda, we could actually look at, you could say, well, you can do it this way, you could do it that way, and we could sort of decide what gives the most information to us and to the public about how things are going to be phased and how it's going to work.
I mean, the way I see it, all these transportation projects, they have come because either it was a previous council priority or the project presented itself, or, I mean, in this situation, it's really complex. There's a lot of timelines, there's a lot of grants, there's a lot of deadlines, there's a lot of various things we have to meet. And I mean, for me, I think I would defer it to our public works director in terms of when certain things are happening. And I think these are all projects that are in place because of either our council priorities or previous council priorities. So I don't know if making more work for our public works director, I just don't know what the ask is, because this document will be a living document that will change and evolve constantly, I think, depending on grant deadlines, grant applications, working collaboratively with our regional partners in terms of what the county has going on or what the RTC has going on. It's just really hard, I mean, to even think about right now. And I understand why we're seeking clarification, because it's so complicated, but I don't know if that direction is what we want to burden our staff more with another presentation of, okay, let's outline all this again and try to clarify the timeline. I don't know if they're good answers. And
I guess I'm looking for the ATP grant. Do we know what effect that's going to have on players? Well,
I think we can just say that we would like a better connectivity of all the different programs that we have going on with transportation.
Thank you.
Always good for a review.
I was just asking for it to be agendized.
Okay.
So that's a
How about Vice Mayor Jensen and Councilmember Clark will be a subcommittee, and they can meet with you and discuss how this gets done. And then you guys can bring something back to the council.
We are the subcommittee for the ATP grant, so that I guess could work.
Yeah, I think that would be a future agenda item. I don't think we can create a committee.
Okay. Without it being on the agenda.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have information about the ATP study come back and how that may or may not affect current projects.
I'm looking for a summary of what the projects we have going on in the city and how that overlaps with the ATP in just a little presentation.
Okay.
Little presentation. That's all my ask was. And if council doesn't want to have that discussion, that's the thing I was just asking for support.
Well, I think.
So how about this? I'll offer a compromise. I've heard Councilmember Westman suggest sort of a summary of a kind of the construction projects. Councilmember Jensen, you're asking for a summary of sort of the timing of the transportation plans we have out there. Why don't we pull that together? I think we have a lot of that information pulled together already in our CIP, and then pull kind of the timing on the plans, because we've been talking about the 41st Avenue Claire's corridor plan, and then the AB 1600 fees and the relationship between that and the mall project. Talk about that timing on the ATP, when we think the construction on Bay, just sort of line these things out, give you guys some dates, and try to put it in a larger context. Does that work for everyone?
That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a couple, two asks based on public comment today. If we can reach out to the sidewalk cleaning company and figure out what the deal is. Great. And then this is maybe for Chief. I don't love to stretch you guys further and further. I liked the comment about the the guards being more involved with their younger constituents, but I'm a fan of a foot patrol in the village, day or night. And I think our people in uniform look great, and they would take them seriously if they're it is pretty bad. The e-bike on the sidewalk situation is pretty scary. So if there's any way we can kind of collaborate with the businesses or with junior guards, especially at that crossover time, I think it would be helpful.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be there.
Okay, great. Thank you for your comments. Consent. All items listed as consent will be enacted in one motion listed below unless something needs to be pulled.
I'll move.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. We're skipping around on this agenda tonight. Let's go down to, I think it says something different online. It does. Okay. On the printed one, we're on item 8B. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. That's why. Here we go. Sorry, folks. There we go. 8B, fiscal year 26-27 capital improvement program.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. So this is our third public hearing on the fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget. So just as kind of a recap, the proposed budget was distributed April 17th. The Finance Advisory Committee held special meetings on May 5th as well as May 26th. The City Council special meetings on May 6th and May 21st. And at the May 21st meeting, provided direction to come back tonight for budget adoption and to incorporate any recommendations from the Finance Advisory Committee's meeting on May 26th. So overall general fund is, we have a balanced budget, estimated ending fund balance, 94,957. Again, well below our traditional target fund balance of 500,000. Reserve funds are 899,000 below policy targets, as listed up on the screen. Some of the budget highlights are PERS costs continue to rise faster than our revenue is growing. This budget, we did increase parking citation revenue pretty significantly since we have returned to full staffing, something we'll watch really close. We did make some reductions as we were going through the process to discretionary training. City Council cut their training by 9,000. Citywide departments reduced training by 46,000. And this was more the discretionary, not the training that required for certificates and to police officers getting their stuff that they need. We also, for Measure Y projects, we added a Measure Y line item, utilize and then put in $250,000 towards projects. Utilizing that this year resulted in an imbalanced budget. However, we do show Measure Y project funding potentially available next year based on current projections. And we talked about the potential for some significant one-time revenue as well. And to go a little deeper into that, we actually received $1 million of insurance proceeds this week. So right now, staff is recommending that we put that to reserves to return to policy targets while we continue to await the FEMA reimbursements. We've gone from an obligated status back to a review status. So I don't know exactly what that means yet. Their person's out this week, so I'll circle back around with them next week. But until I hear back from FEMA and we get some kind of acknowledgement that that's actually going to happen, right now in my mind, I look at it as the 1 million kind of sitting there, kind of filling that gap until we see what happens there. Building permits, just as a reminder, big project coming forward. We believe this fall we'll be tracking with about $300,000 of building permit revenue to the general fund. We have some back TOT payments of about $300,000. We entered into a settlement agreement on those, and those payments began coming last month. And then we have the potential for a surplus land sale possibly later in the current fiscal year. As far as the 5-year CIP summary, we have completed or substantially completed 4 projects at about $14.2 million. We have another active and funded 3 projects at $4.7 million. We have 5 partially funded and active planning projects, and current estimate is about $14.3 million. And that's the estimate on 3 of those 5. 2 of them still don't have dollars. They're smaller projects, but don't have good estimates yet. And then we have 2 other projects that are just in the concept phase and remain unfunded. So summary, general fund, current projections show the budget structurally balanced utilizing Measure Y funding both this year and next year. However, beginning in 29-30, fiscal year 29-30, we're showing that we start to go a little bit upside down, and then it becomes more structurally imbalanced going out. But again, we'll wait and see what our CalPERS UAL looks like. Hopefully it goes down. General fund, as I mentioned, below the target level, awaiting for the FEMA Cal OES reimbursements. Reserves would be fully funded if insurance payment is allocated to reserves. The general fund revenues, potential for several one-time revenues that we're tracking, and we'll also be watching our major revenues, sales tax, TOT, as well as parking, both the parking revenue as well as citations. On the expenditure side, maintaining high service levels, really no reduction to any service levels, and we always are constantly evaluating any of our contract services. As far as future budget reports to the council, in September, the last week of August, we'll get the final sales tax for the current fiscal year. So we'll come back in September and report on the final sales tax revenue for this fiscal year, get a final general fund ending fund balance, and then give a update if we have any on any of the one-time revenues. Then we will get the first quarter for fiscal year 26-27 sales tax at the end of November. So we'll be back for first quarter budget review in December. And again, watching those key revenues and then tracking the status of those one-time revenues. And then we will be back in February for our mid-year budget review. So our recommended action tonight is to approve the resolution adopting the fiscal year 26-27 operating budget and 5-year capital improvement program. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
I actually just have one question right now, and it came up about from going to the AMBAG meeting last night, where we had on our agenda a new MOU for the Monterey Bay Area Regional Climate Project Working Group. And the city of Capitola actually pays $5,000 into that group every year. So I was wondering if we could get a little information about, is that something that we want to continue? Are we getting benefits from being part of that group? Because the majority of the cities in AMBAG have declined to participate in it. I think there are only 8 of us that are doing it. So it was more clarification question.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. So the RCPWG, because everything environmental has a very long acronym, is a tri-county working group that is aimed at providing funding and regional projects for climate adaptation and then also energy projects. So we collectively put our funds together, and there is a consultant, and we apply for grants. They've been very successful in getting grants. You may recall that very large grant that was tri-county area for all the charging. That was a federal grant that unfortunately was rescinded because the program was rescinded federally. But another grant that they have that directly involves the city of Capitola that they actually achieved before we were part of the working group was for the Monterey Bay Climate Adaptation Plan, which has several projects in it that include Zone 5, including Noble Gulch directly through Capitola. So currently with this group, we are benefiting directly. The council approved its most recent MOU for us to be in this group, I believe, last council meeting.
Okay. I just wanted to make certain that our $5,000 is being well spent. So actually, I'm going to ask one more. So we have the $1 million that's come in. And what you're recommending is that we wait until September to decide how we're going to allocate that $1 million?
Or unless the FEMA reimbursement starts coming in sooner. I'm saying to hold on to it in the reserves until we get kind of a guarantee that we're going to see that FEMA money.
Okay.
One detail I just learned is that we downshifted our FEMA status. We went from obligated to reviewed, which I have never heard of before. In the past, when we have been working through the FEMA status, you move through sort of like submitted, review, obligated, and then we get a check 6 weeks later.
Generally, and we were obligated at the end of August of last year.
And so the fact that we
Then it changed in January. Well, in January, they started requesting more information. And then I just noticed that they changed the status when I was in there earlier this week.
So I would just be cautious on the FEMA money is making me very nervous, I will say.
So do we have, I mean, the $1 million we got was a reimbursement for the damage on the wharf? Is that why we got it?
Yes, it was for the storm damage to the wharf, so refunding general fund money that we spent repairing the wharf.
Okay, thank you.
A follow-up on that question, did we receive $1 million for the wharf house up front? Is that the same $1 million or is this a different $1 million? There's insurance money, correct?
So this is the second insurance payout because of the two separate storms. So we got, I think it was about 700 and just under 800,000, right? I think it was just under 800,000 for the January 23 storms. And this was a separate claim we put in for the building losses, which occurred the December 23 storms. And so this is the second.
And the restaurant and the buildings that were taken down were not part of the FEMA claim, and FEMA was never covering that cost.
So we've received about $1.8 million between insurance claim and this last claim. Is that correct?
Yeah, 1.7, 1.8.
Okay. Okay, so I just want to make sure that, again, I think there might be some questions about, does all that money sit into the reserves, right off the bat? So is just, you're recommending it sit into the reserves until we look at sales tax measure in September, and then it's brought back to council to decide if that money is going to stay in reserves or that, right? So it's not.
And it doesn't necessarily have to wait till one of the budget reviews I listed there. If something moves before any of those dates, we would be back before council.
I'm sorry?
If we find out information before September, we won't wait till the budget review. We would come back and let council know.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I mean, I have two thoughts about, the community lost assets and everything. We receive insurance money and stuff, and the assets aren't going to be replaced potentially, and the money is going to go into a reserve general fund because of the state of what the city has spent money in the past. And so I'd like to make sure that the council has a conversation regarding that. And then I'm also very concerned about looking at a forecast coming forward with El Nino, what could happen, and what's our contingency plan. And hate to think our contingency plan is that we have $1 million of insurance money to then pay for damage that we might have during El Nino. So okay, thank you with that. I guess my thinking there's some small things just with the budget that's put in front of us. I'm talking about just a couple of goals that I think are good, that I think when people go back in the community look at. I know there was a goal for our city attorney regarding PRAs to look at how we can offset our costs and stuff like that. And I didn't see that on there as a continuation of it wasn't even identified as the goal for last year. And could you elaborate on that? And will you be working on that as a goal, and how you maybe could help offset our PRA costs?
Yes, I will be working with the city clerk on this issue, and we do intend to bring a presentation at the next council meeting on the 25th to address PRAs.
Thank you. And then one of our goals, I think that we're already doing, but I think we should highlight, is that we're implementing the redistricting process. And so it's just documented as a document when people look back to see what the council is doing. Yeah, I mean, it clearly states the things, each department lists out all the things they're working on. It kind of looks like council does have as many goals, and one of our goals should be, I think, highlighted that we're working through that process. So I would hope that can be included in that. And then I saw in there, Jim, and I appreciate that you have the Measure Y funding that we talked about, $250,000, and it's a line item at zero, but it's not funded for any repairs. And so it's just clearly noted that we projected that we might have money, but with this budget, with the surplus of $90-something thousand, obviously that's not going to happen. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then my other question, I guess, goes to our police department. I know, Chief, we talk a lot about our traffic and our statistics and stuff like that. And feedback I've gotten about, requests and how you guys pull data and stuff like that seems like it's challenging and stuff. And I know our finance department is adding on a modular to make their job easy and stuff like that. Do you guys have the same kind of operating system? Is there any augmentation that we could do or help you provide more data freely in PRA requests or requests about data and e-bike safety and all this stuff?
For data, to produce data, we did start looking in about a year ago at a program that would talk to Crossroads, which is something that we use for our citation technology, to sort of fill the gap while we anticipate a new records management system that we've been waiting for quite some time. You know, with working through the budget, we sort of backed away from it, but we had looked at the cost of that of around, you know, $6,000 or $7,000 to add that onto Alliance, which is our report writing system, because it's very antiquated pulling data from that system, as we've discussed in the past when you've asked for traffic related or citation data.
So follow, I think we're looking at software to help on for our financial decision. Are you saying like a $6,000 or $7,000 add-on could help streamline the process and that you could pull information easier, and that would be something that maybe your records department would be an asset to them?
Yeah, there's a program that we had researched about a year ago that we could implement with what we have for now while we're working through the introduction of the new RMS system. That's correct.
I would like to propose, you know, if we could look, I don't know if we have to make a cut somewhere, or if the budget could at least allow for, if it's a $6,000 or $7,000 item, to make sure that we can have that. Because I think it's critical. I know in the reason, this comes back to a couple of years ago, even before I got on council, when I was on planning, you asked for information about, you know, how many e-bike accidents. Like, well, we don't have a category for that, and it's too hard to pull and everything. I think data is going to be key, especially when we talk about all these changes that we have with traffic and stuff like that. So I would like to hear from other council members, or if our city manager or finance department can magically work that.
One thing I will point out is that just today, the Regional 911 Board did approve a contract with Tyler Tech for the new RMS system. And so the rollout is occurring over the next 12 months. So I understand your enthusiasm for data. I share it. I've been frustrated many times by the lack of difficulty in getting data out of our system. We are literally in the process of fixing it right now. And
that's wonderful. But isn't this the same system that has been 8 years in the planning?
It is. However, in this case, we just entered a contract with somebody to do it. And it's Tyler Tech. It's the enterprise software that we use for our financial systems. So
that's already budgeted?
It's included in your draft budget. So the increases that you see in the 911
covers that too? It
does. I think our SCRMS cost increased by, that's a significant portion of the increase you'll see in the 911 budget is the SCRMS. That's the Santa Cruz Regional Records Management System budget. I think we went from 40 to 70 maybe in this year's budget for this. And that's a direct result of the new RMS system.
And it is a 1-year implementation?
No, this is a 10-year step up in cost.
And within the year, we'll be able to pull data.
That's what I understand.
I haven't seen it yet, so.
Yeah, I don't want to promise that. I do know that we were under negotiations with them about the length of time that we would be paying the subscription fee prior to the actual being able to have functional usability of it. And so we negotiated the 12 months down to 9 months. But my understanding was that it was supposed to be about a year implementation.
So would it be acceptable to put that on our September list? Because then you'll have the opportunity to have a little more information and an issue that we could revisit. Because in September, one of the things I would like to revisit is some of the training costs that we took away from the staff. It seems to me now that we have this, $1 million that's come in, we can look at some of those costs as well, and spending, $5,000 or $6,000 more to have something like economic development done would be, a worthwhile course. So if we could add that to September too, that would be great.
All right, continue on. My next question I have. We talked briefly, Jim, about how tight the budget is, and maybe I missed on your slide. Are you going to be providing us more updates sooner than like our mid-year was always in February? Are we going to have a check and balance to make sure that we have an opportunity to pause where we're spending other than just the September thing? And maybe I missed on your slide. I apologize.
We'll be back in September to kind of close out the current fiscal year. I won't have real sales tax data for this fiscal year until November. I'll get the September numbers. And that's really kind of just because sales tax is so much of our revenue, it's really hard to adjust until we know what that is. So December is really the earliest as far as sales tax. If the one-time revenues start coming in, then that's a different conversation. But if everything just kind of stays and we're just waiting for sales tax and none of the one-time revenues are moving, then probably December is the earliest for this current fiscal year.
I apologize. I have a couple more questions, but it follows into my next one. One of our biggest things that we're balancing our budget on is parking revenue. And we're shooting high for a number. And we have been fully staffed for the last couple of months. Do you have any updated numbers on how we're tracking at this present time?
Just off the top of my head, I want to say we're at double of what we were at this time for the prior year. That's for, what did we just get? We just got February and March. So I think you've been fully staffed for about 3 months. And so January was a little bit better than the January before, but February and March were about double what the prior years. And I anticipate those to continue to increase a little bit, but it's something we're watching really close because it is a big jump.
And have a hard time.
And it's like we talked about, people may change their behavior. So that's what we need to watch out for is the citations. You know, if they just keep writing the same number, I think we're good. But if there's a behavior change, then we'll have to watch for that.
Perfect. Let's see. And I appreciate, we did have a conversation that you highlighted some of the cuts that we have made. We might change those at a later date, but that I think a couple questions I've heard from the community, I think that one came in is like, why are we always looking at just increase in revenue? Are we looking at cuts? And I think it shows that we made, I don't know, what was the total of cuts that you projected that we made? Was it?
For just the training, it was 46,000 in departments and 9,000 for city council. There was other like cuts, but they were more like the 911 JPA truing up their numbers. So there was a big reduction from the first draft to the second draft, but it wasn't necessarily a cut that we made. It was just a better estimate from the outside.
So just for the community, we made approximately $50,000 in cuts or something like that?
About 55,000, yeah.
Perfect, thank you for that. And just, yeah, I look forward to having the conversation, I guess, a little more in depth.
We also, just to finish that thought, we also changed the way we're handling our OPEB. So the 67,000 that we were putting into the trust, we're not doing that. So that freed up money because the first draft we had proposed freezing an MSO position, which by changing that OPEB by not contributing and then using that $1 million trust to make those premium payments allowed us to fund that position and not freeze it. So that was a way to, not necessarily a budget reduction, but it was a way to maintain the service level at the same cost that we're doing right now.
All I'm saying is I just look forward to having another review of this in September when we see what our sales tax are and go from there. So that's all my comments. Thank you.
Not so much as a question, but I'd like to thank Jim and his finance staff for the budget and what we've been doing and the members of the FAC.
We can go to public comment on this item. Anyone that wishes to speak, come on down. Hi.
Yeah, hi. My name is Peter Wilk, and thank you, Jerry, for addressing my email about cuts. Yeah, because I was surprised. I went back and went on YouTube and looked at the last 3 meetings on budgets that go back to March, and I was expecting to see a presentation from City Council saying, okay, you know, we've got a hard budget ahead of us. Here's where we can cut. I talked to all my department managers, and they took a 20% challenge, and boy, you know, here's how painful it will be if we actually balance the budget without, hey, Well, how about without Measure Y? Here's what we'd have to do if we didn't have Measure Y. Here's the cuts we'd have to make. And, oh, now let's superimpose Measure Y on that, like, the people thought they were going to get is now we got an infrastructure budget on top of that. So I would, in fact, reject this budget until I at least had some information about spending cuts that actually balanced the budget. And just ask the question and say, hey, we'd have to reduce staff. Here's what we'd have, and see what are the must-haves, what are the financial obligations, where could we maybe cut? Maybe we can get rid of the, here are some nice-to-haves, but, maybe we. So I think you should ask those tough questions, get that data, and just not say, yeah, well, maybe in 3 years we're going to go bankrupt. We'll address it then. So I suggest you give Jamie a little more work.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council and staff. Thank you, Jim, for getting us this far. It was a journey this year with the process, and I think we made a tremendous amount of progress. And to the previous speakers' comments, I think we are making good progress in that area. I think we decided to designate some money for some software to allow the finance department to start showing more transparency and presenting to you more regularly. Having said that, let's stay on top of that, because there was a comment like, and then I'll be back in February. Like, let's not go back to our old ways now that we're done and getting a budget done. Let's figure out a way to use that software to start doing some sensitivity analysis. What are the 3 big revenue items? Sales tax, TOT, and parking revenue. You can do some management by walking around. You can just ask vacation rental owners, how are they doing? Are they doing better? And to that end, I didn't really understand with TOT that you'd have to go out for another ballot measure, and the city manager explained that to me. Now wouldn't be a good time probably to ask for more tax revenue. So the BIA this morning talked about that and said, why don't we just get really aggressive working with Katie and economic development and Santa Cruz, Terrence at Santa Cruz, Visit Santa Cruz, and just drive up the vacation rental number so that the percentage of TOT on top of that is more. So let's think of new and different ways to do things. Let's keep track on how the businesses feel like they're doing. Might give us a sales tax metric before we actually get the data. Let's put those assumptions into the software and into the model and start looking at what could be on the revenue side, and then create some on-deck priorities for either cuts or expenditures, opportunities to spend more, or places we're going to have to get more aggressive about cuts. There's a lot of ways to do this that are less sophisticated, but just demonstrate good macro leadership. And I think with the tools we have and the progress we made, we can do that. But let's not stop talking about this. Let's talk about it in September, even if we don't have the data yet. There's metrics there to look at. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I do think,
I just want to see if anybody else wants to publicly comment. And seeing none, go right ahead.
I think both the mayor and I are on the Finance Advisory Committee, and one of our first goals is to come up with a program for next year for the items that we're going to be looking at. And one of the top items on that agenda is to look more at the long-term picture of how the city's finances are going to play out. And with the new information that we're going to be able to get from the finance department with our new software, I think is going to go a long way to helping us, be more thoughtful and more creative about how we should move forward through the next 4 or 5 years in Capitola. So should we make a motion to approve the resolution adopting fiscal year 26-27 operating budget and 5-year capital improvement program?
I'll second that.
We have a first and a second. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Item C, 8C, 2026 general municipal election.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's hard to believe we're here again, but we are in an election year and the nomination period begins in just about a month. There are no slides for tonight's presentation? Thanks, Jim. Because it's a really brief item, I'll be honest with you. I almost forgot earlier, and I was like, what are my slides for tonight? And then I realized, you know what? I didn't do them because it's so brief. Because it's a simple election year, we don't have any measures on the ballot yet. So we're just really adopting a resolution calling for the election and consolidating the election with the county. It is a little bit earlier than we normally do, and that's just because of the timeline to get the notice to the Santa Cruz Sentinel, which is our paper of general circulation in the city. They are a small operation. They continuously kind of up their legal noticing deadlines. So in order to meet the deadline to get this in the newspaper, we're doing this at tonight's meeting instead of the second meeting in June. So based on California law, we have to officially call for an election. We have to request consolidation with the county so that they will run the election and that we are agreeing to pay the cost. So tonight's item before you for consideration is adoption of a resolution ordering the election, requesting that the county run the election for us and that we will reimburse them for the price. This year, we will have 3 seats on the ballot. As we've talked about at length at other meetings, we are in the process of transitioning to districts. This will not apply to these 3 seats. So members of the public who are interested in running can run for the seats and will serve a 4-year term if elected, though there is nothing prohibiting them from running for a districted seat once that becomes an option to them. I will just mention, yesterday we had a candidate outreach event here at City Hall. It was very well attended. The county participated. We provided presentations to those who are interested in running. I'll say about 20 people on average were there, so it was a well-attended public meeting. And like I mentioned, the candidate nomination period will begin in July, which is just around the corner. So there's information in the agenda packet and on our website about those who might be interested in running. They can find resources there. There's also there are resources available on the county website. If you would like to look at the candidate handbook, it's available on the county website. And that's all I have in my informal presentation. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Questions? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back for a motion.
I'll move the recommended action.
First and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Last item on the agenda, 9, adjournment. Thank you all. Take care of yourself and others.